It's been a tremendous experience for me, and this year the classroom is a richer place.
Where have all the young men gone? Long time I sing. Where have all the young men gone? Long time gone.
Social psychology certainly was involved in what was happening in the classroom. One could use the model of aliens being brought into a setting, not, at least in the initial stages, being part of an in-group, not belonging as such, and being required to survive, to make the necessary adjustment in a strange or alien situation.
In insects, you got the whole world in his hands.
And the black kids on the way to school sing, he's got the whole world in his hands. And people just cheered and wept when Marian Anderson sang that 20 years ago. But when they get to school, they sing white songs. That's part of the colonialization.
Certainly the film concentrated on Leonard and Derwin. There is the temptation to interpret their behavior in terms of the differences. They are both black. They are in a, quote, strange school. For myself, I was not persuaded that these variables, the difference variables, were the determinants of their behavior. Leonard can be found in any school. An outgoing, attractive, attention-seeking, and for the most part successful in obtaining attention, smiling, clearly a gregarious young man. And it would be strange if these characteristics, which seem so part of his total personality, were to be understood exclusively or even primarily in terms of that setting. On the other hand, Derwin's introversion could have been intensified by the setting. I'm sure that there was some awareness on Derwin's part that his chief, not adversary, but in a sense competitor, was Leonard. And the only possible way he could deal with that would be by intensifying his own characteristics, withdrawing rather than trying to be more gregarious than Leonard. He let Leonard do his thing, and he sought not to do that which he felt he could not do with any degree of success.
Now, there's a theory in social psychology of why this would be so, called social comparison theory. Social psychologists firmly believe that we learn most about ourselves by the process of comparing ourselves with other people. And the problem with that interesting idea is, how do we pick out people to compare with? A lot of people we could compare ourselves with. Why some, not others? One of the major things we think is similarity. You will pick out people you regard as similar to you in important ways to do your comparison with. It may well be that the black child having trouble adjusting is having trouble precisely because his competitor is so incredibly successful.
Another example of social comparison theory is the obvious formation of some collective or group spirit among the different black children in the classroom. For example, in the film, the teacher asked Derwin, "Have you done your homework?" And there was a black girl standing right next to Derwin, and she nodded as vigorously as Derwin did, which I think illustrates the kind of identification that they have with each other as members of a common group.
The black youngsters came into that school pretty stable in their awareness of being black and their awareness of the larger society's evaluation of black and the distinctions which are made between blacks and whites. All that happens from this point on seems to me to be the extent to which experience strengthens a positive self-image of minority group children or strengthens and reinforces negative self-image. In this particular classroom, it appears as if the teacher was quite conscious of conserving a positive self-image of these children. The skill of the teacher was indicated indirectly, but in extremely important ways, by the helping behavior that the other children showed toward some of their classmates.
Now, put yourself in the place of the white children. After living 8 or 9 years with barely any contact at all with black people, suddenly these buses come and disgorge all kinds of black children into their school. It has to be a bewildering experience for these children, and probably what happens is that they talk with each other a good deal about it, and they have to talk also with their parents about it. The child will, at home, ask what's going on here, and one of the things that you can expect liberal parents to say is, these people are poor. The reason that they're poor is that they were in slavery and that they've been discriminated against, and that polite people, nice people, people like us, don't behave nastily to black children or black grown-ups. So the parents in that way pass on the norms of the social group or the reference group that the children are growing up in. An illustration of the strength of those norms is when Leonard and a white boy hug each other, and as they pull apart, then the white boy turns to the camera with a kind of a smile. What he's doing is asking for the approval of grown-ups who he presumes reflect these norms.
All of us are doing everything we can to help these kids, and this year the classroom is a richer place.
When the teacher says at the end he feels the classroom is richer for the presence of the black students, I'll take that. He seemed like he cared for these kids. He was willing physically to touch them. This, incidentally, is a very important point, that a lot of us are unwilling to touch someone of another sex, surprise, and of another race. I remember a group experience in Philadelphia where Max Birnbaum, running groups deftly, magnificently, had to guide a white man's hand and put it on a black woman's arm. And you could see those muscles just tense and like, wham, boy, you know, explosion when you touch that black skin. You know, and he said, hey, you know, it's warm.
The hard, hard ground, the hard, hard ground will be my bed, will be my bed. My saddle seat, and the saddle seat will hold my head, will hold my head. Could we do Jenny James?
Notice that the classroom scenes in this film are all from an elementary classroom. Now that's important because their integration is far easier to accomplish. And there we know the most positive effects for both white and black children are accomplished. Our best research to date would suggest that black children's achievement is definitely improved in predominantly white classrooms, and in addition, there are very strong favorable effects for both white and black children in racial attitudes and behavior. Now, I admit, this doesn't help you to politically argue with the parents at the doorstep as the students were doing in the film. For busing, it's hard to tell a bigoted parent that the big advantage for his white child of going to the interracial school will be that his child won't grow up to be a bigot like he is. He may not take that as the strongest and most convincing argument he ever heard, yet it's nevertheless true. It is preparing children to live in an interracial world, a world which is predominantly non-white, as the negative term has it in the United States. A world which obviously some of the parents in this film are not too prepared to accept, at least without strong emotional negative reactions.
I vote yes.
Vote no. That's right. He doesn't have anybody that's concerned.
The thing that I worry very, very much about is when someone is as angered as so many of those people are, when they're so dogmatic, you're not going to change those attitudes.
It's very difficult to change a person's racial attitudes after he's left childhood.
If the busing is defeated, the defeat of it, in spite of any media, will be a slap in the face to the black community to say, in other words, oh, well, it will be reported by the newspapers. That's how it'll be aware.
People use a variety of different mechanisms for maintaining the consistency between their own prior position and the stimulus material that they are exposed to.
I've talked to school teachers that have taught, and they claim that really you can do your level best. The teacher will try to do what they can to teach them, but they go home to that same environment.
Of course, teachers may have told her many things. She selected out selective perception, as we call it in social psychology. She selected out what was congruent or consistent with what she believes against busing already. So what teachers told her, they were probably anti-busing teachers that she was talking to, since pro-busing teachers are probably not among her friends. She hears the evidence that she wants to hear.
I'm calling about the busing proposal that we're going to be voting on next week. Are you familiar with it? Have you come to a decision? And would you care to tell us what it is? You feel that 5- and 6-year-old children would bring trouble into Great Neck?
In most instances in the film, we're dealing with issues which have very little physical reality. They have very little concrete reality to people. They don't know the people that are involved. They don't know the black families. They don't know the black children. They aren't able to anticipate the consequences of busing very well. All they have is some vague fears, some rumors, some stereotypes from their childhood, a lot of very vague, ambiguous stuff. Now, in such a situation, what most people do is turn to social reality. That is, they turn to their friends. We saw this most vividly in the group of people sitting around the coffee table, exchanging their shared negative attitudes about busing.
All right, now what happens if we get a colored teacher for a kid, and these poor kids can't understand the lingo because of their brokenness?
The way to really polarize this country is to laugh at and resent the man that refers to black speech patterns as a brogue.
I've lived in Great Neck my whole life. My parents still live here. And I just can't see how it's going to improve these children. It's a drop in the bucket, really.
Those people that are going around antagonizing, not questioning people on their attitudes, but really accusing them of having attitudes, such that the poor person is sitting in his doorway, standing in his doorway, must say things like, I came here, my parents lived here, I'm just doing what my parents, he's invoking his country, he's invoking God. Those people are threatened people.
I work 12 hours a day in a retail store so I can live in a place like this. I lived in East New York for 5 years. And I took my kids out of there and moved here because of that reason. Because it was a jungle. And what they're trying to do now is bring kids from jungles here.
Notice the gentleman who referred to having worked 10 hours a day in retail stores for many years in order to be able, as he said, to get here, meaning Great Neck, New York, instead of living in East New York. And there he was, of course, attempting, as he put it very bluntly, to get away from blacks, and here were blacks following him to Great Neck. And that man was clearly in considerable status threat. Or the other gentleman who made the case that he had worked all his life, has had his parents, he had followed his parents' teachings and wanted his children to follow his teachings.
This is my American way of life. I grew up this way, my mother and father taught me this way, and I want my children to think that way also.
What is he referring to? I think he's referring to the fact that he's worked all of his life to achieve the status level which he has now secured, and he feels this severely threatened by the possibility of blacks entering the schools.
Hey, listen, you big mouth, you know what? I'm talking to you.
Don't hit me with anything, lady. That's assault, and you know what happened the last time.
You know about any... Oh, shut your mouth.
You darn. If one looked at those film clips or the board meetings in that film, one saw that one was not just dealing with ideas. One was not just dealing with mistaken judgments. One was rather dealing with the totality of the anxieties, the fears,